After Effects has some incredible tools for working with keyframes. You have the ability to change keyframe interpolation, copy and paste keyframes, work with keyframe graphs, and even add expressions. Let's take a look at all of these features in action, and then in later movies, see some plugins that will assist us with the process of keyframing.
When it comes to keyframes, After Effects has a ton of options available for you to manipulate them. So if we take a look here at this animation in the Chapter 5.1 composition, I'm just going to hit the space bar. We've got a very linear based animation. So these keyframes are the default keyframes that are applied once you manipulate a layer's parameters. And you can see here that these layers are simply staggered with basically position movement on the X and Y and Z axis happening to them. One thing I can do right away to help with the believability of this animation is actually turn on motion blur for this composition. And then I'm going to click and drag to turn it on for all of the layers that are moving in space. So everything minus the background. And this just gives you a little bit more believability with the movement. Now, people are usually attracted to things that move similar to items in real life. So you can do slams like this type of linear movement. Let's say if we had a piece of music and we're trying to have an aggressive move in place. But if I were to give the analogy of a car coming to a stop sign, the car usually slows down at the stop sign and also overshoots its target of stopping. So it slightly goes a little bit more than when it comes to its resting position. And that's in some cases what we can do to add some more complex movement to our layers by playing around with interpolation and also playing with the graph editor. So let's do a little change here to the first coin that's falling in the stack. It's actually going to be named coin number 1. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to solo it by clicking on this button. I'm going to hit U just to reveal its position keyframes. So you can select the word position and then right click either of these keyframes to change its interpolation, such as to easy ease. You can also press F9 to do that. We can also play around with a graph editor to get even more complex movement. And I'm going to click on this graph editor right here. This is known as a value graph. And I'm also going to click on 2 buttons down here. So I'm going to fit the graph to view to make those position keyframes spread out a little bit larger. I'm also going to separate the dimensions for both X and Y. And the minute I do that, what happens is I get these handles available for me on the keyframe graphs, which is going to make it easier to manipulate the movement of the Y position of coin 1. So let me move to the end here. You can see that kind of linear move when it comes to its resting place. I'm going to just take this handle. And what I'm looking for here is to have it overshoot its target before it comes to its resting position and then kind of ease in to its final resting position. Now let's just see how that looks. I'm just going to take my playhead here and hit N to trim the work area and then hit the space bar to start playing back so we can see that little bounce take place. Now it'd be really handy just to fit this graph into view, so we can use this handy button here at the bottom just to fit our entire graph into the view and get a better view of that overall graph in the scene. And we can take this and we can copy and paste it to the other layers in our composition. And another thing to keep in mind is that we should get in the habit of saving presets for any animation that we do. So one great thing is if I hit the disclosure triangle right now and just unsolo this and just hit the disclosure triangle again so we can see the X position and the Y position, I want to just select these two and actually head up to my animation menu, where I have an option to save this as an animation preset. And the power of this is I can build a library of animations that I can easily apply to other layers in projects that are similar or compositions that are similar to this. So it's a great habit to get into. On top of being able to save animation presets, there are a ton of animation presets available for both layers and text inside of After Effects that you should become familiar with. One way that we can apply a preset to a layer is to go to Animation Browse Presets. And here in this menu, you can see there's a ton of different categories. Let's take a look at some of the transitional options available. There's one great one here for text, but let's head over to Transitions Movement. I'm just going to double click on that folder. And if we actually single click these items, we are able to see a preview on the right-hand side. And if you double click them, they're actually applied on the selected layer inside of After Effects. So tons of options. Keep in mind you can save to this section here as well, save presets, or you can use some of these presets to create some lovely complicated animations. So there is a ton of power right here in After Effects without necessarily having to jump into third-party plugins for working with keyframes.